Well, let's get started. Today we're going to talk about the tech talent pipeline in Arizona, which is very impressive. Our speaker is Dr. Betsy Cantwell, Senior Vice President for Research and Innovation at the University of Arizona. Betsy leads the Office for Research, Innovation, and Impact, which includes the Corporate Engagement Program, Tech Launch Arizona, the Forge, and the University of Arizona Research Parks. She's responsible for expanding the university's capacity for knowledge, creation, and discovery, integrating efforts by faculty, students, staff, and executive leaders to move innovations and technologies to the marketplace. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Betsy Cantwell.
You should wait to clap until I'm done, just in case it's not worth it. I see a couple people can I see a show of hands of people who actually know me? Thanks. So it's not too many people in the room who know what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to interleave. I have a bunch of formal slides. This is really how we do it at the University of Arizona. There's a lot of room to, I wouldn't call it improve, but to really rethink how we look at our tech talent pipelines from the perspective of partnerships. But that's basically my entire career. I've been at the University of Arizona for 2.5 years. I was at Arizona State University before this, so I speak with knowledge of all 3 of the major universities in the state of Arizona and how we view, use a kind of a what's good for the state of Arizona lens for our public universities. And I think that's something that I would encourage you all to really be thinking about. It's not just tech talent pipelines for your companies or for the companies in your region, but how are public universities changing through all of the change that's happening to public universities to become more embedded in the, I'll call it the innovation or the economic development ecosystem of the future of your region, not what is happening today. All of these examples are from the University of Arizona. And again, I think I would encourage you, if we have time for questions, to really begin thinking about your area. And I'm pretty comfortable. I've worked in economic development in a number of states in the US, including New Mexico and Tennessee and California and Illinois. So I'm pretty comfortable sort of answering questions about more than what we're doing here. So let's talk a little bit about our talent pipeline. We actually have a mandate to think about the economic prosperity of our state. We're not only a public university, we are the land-grant university in the state of Arizona. And so workforce development is something that we're always thinking about. Our goal is to produce graduates. We have a lot of graduate students, but our goal is to produce undergraduates who are ready for the workforce in Arizona. Our goal is to keep them in Arizona. Our goal is to create either positions for them, have them become the developers of new ideas and new companies, or slot into the growth areas for the state. So a little background on, sorry, it's going to be this one, on Arizona. The university has 8,700 incoming undergraduates this year. It's the largest incoming undergraduate class in the history of the university. We will probably next year exceed 50,000 students. That makes us a large university. Certainly we live 2 hours away from one of the largest universities in the country that serves almost 80,000 students on the ground, and then a whole bunch online. So we don't think of ourselves as really big, but we are. We have close to 300,000 graduates in states all over the country, and internationally, but we really target looking at our alumni base nationally. We're also really rich in producing high quality graduates. We have a lot of Fulbright scholars. We're one of the top producers of Fulbright scholars in the US. We have top programs in things like management information systems, and a number of other what I would call sort of tech-ready majors that feed undergraduates into the workforce. I know I'm going to get a question on this, so I'm going to take a break and tell you just a little bit about how we develop curriculum, because I would love to say we partner with the top 25 companies in the state of Arizona. They help us develop the curriculum, but that is not how it works in higher education. Our regulatory bodies are not associated with companies or even really political parties or state elected agencies of any sort. They are associated with the oversight bodies for higher education, which there's one for the US, and then there are regional bodies that say whether or not you meet the standards and can operate as an institution of higher ed in the US. So we're always kind of balancing between all of the regulatory oversight that allows us to operate at the scale that we operate. And one of those measures for us is how we work with companies. But I'll address that later, but I did want to get that out on the table right away. It's really, really challenging to just change curriculum. Even if I wanted to change curriculum inside of a year, it would be very challenging. I have probably 5 different oversight bodies that need to make approvals for that kind of thing. For the University of Arizona, about 90% of our students graduate with a job, our undergraduates. We do surveys as to the extent that we can of all the places that they go. And about 90% of the places that they go come back and say, for what it's worth, that these students arrived with the skill set that we expected them to have and that we needed them to have. So we do really try and figure out how to, and in a very rapidly changing environment, I might add, how to deliver students into the workforce. Sorry, this is sort of annoying because I have to talk from my notes, so let's talk about a couple of things that are rapidly changing. We have a brand new School of Mining and Mineral Resources. That's important for the state of Arizona. We have always had mining as a core industry base in the state of Arizona. We have the only we are the only educational institution that delivers students with a degree in mineral and mining engineering. We also have degrees in the College of Science, in geology and in minerals that are science degrees, not engineering degrees. But we just established the School for Mineral and Mining Resources, which gathers all of that together, including business and legal, and asks the question, how do we deliver workforce-ready, 21st century-ready, fourth industrial revolution-ready students into the mining industry today? We recently established, these are just sort of examples of how we are moving our students into tomorrow's workforce. Something called the Center to Stream Healthcare in Place. They recently got a large NSF award, but that group was pulling together early to bring our engineering faculty, our medical faculty, and our social sciences faculty together to look at how devices can be distributed in homes in order to get patient data, provide care without patients needing to leave their homes. So this is a pretty big collaborative. It has partners outside of our institution. And the requirement for the federal funding is that within 10 years, you have translated the technology developments funded by this funding into corporations in Arizona, or sorry, in the US really. And so you have to come to the table with commercial or industrial partners as part of this bid. We have, I think, 6 or 7 larges, 6 or 7 mediums, and a bunch of small or startup companies that are part of this award. You can see some of the, I'm going to focus on our College of Engineering because it's one of the places where we are shifting to grow for the 21st century job market. And this is not just the University of Arizona. You will see this at many universities which have historically had a College of Engineering that's about the same size as most of their other schools, beginning to think we have got to create more engineers. We've got to deliver more multidisciplinary engineers into the workforce, meaning they don't just have to have, their general education has to really help them focus on data literacy, not just understanding how to build an algorithm around data, social impacts of the work that they do. Okay, I went over this one, so that's because I went backwards. Let me talk for just a minute about the Craig Burge Engineering Design Program. This is an example of, you'll see more of this happening at the University of Arizona. This is a program that aims for actually any student that's interested, but they're almost all engineering majors at this point, to prepare students for careers by bringing them through what we kind of call experiential learning programs through their last 2 years. So they're not just head down taking engineering courses until they finish and then go get their experiential learning on the job when they start a position. We're actually delivering them much more job ready. I think I missed, yeah, I did. All right, that's right. I'm gonna just skip around here a little bit. So this is a program that gives students interdisciplinary design training, often with companies, working with them, entrepreneurship opportunities, which I'll talk about a little bit, through their entire undergraduate experience. And then they spend their senior year in kind of a glorified capstone. For those of you that have an engineering degree or have hired students who come in with an engineering capstone experience, which is, it's typically been maybe 25% of our engineering students leave with a capstone experience, meaning they have worked directly with a company on a team, actually building a product or designing something. They're working on a company problem, and often the IP, if there is any, belongs to the company. We are expanding that greatly. So, I mean, the ultimate goal is you don't graduate with an engineering degree without having a capstone-like experience. Our students are telling us that's what they want. That's really across the board, not just in engineering. So we're also ramping up our undergraduate research programs, with the goal being that every student at the University of Arizona at some level will have experienced some version of a research experience, because that teaches them how to organize their thinking, how to design a problem solution, how to tell us that they're going to go after the solution, and in some cases have worked on a research program where they actually know how to write up the results, they know how to think that way. We're also looking at delivering entrepreneurship training to all of our undergraduates. So that doesn't mean that we want you all to be entrepreneurs. What we want them to do is have an experience in the entrepreneurial mindset. So they understand that the entrepreneurial mindset isn't just about starting your own company. It is something you bring to all the work that you do lifelong, especially as they're going to be lifelong scholars as much as anything else. And then we typically end this program and many of our Innovation Challenge programs with some version of I call it a bake-off, some version of a contest at the end. And some of those come with prizes, some of them come with guaranteed letters of recommendation, some of them come with, there's a host of endpoints for that. The students are incredibly hungry for that. So, sorry, but I'm going to go back now to our student engagement and career development, because this is really the stage setting for what I just talked about, which is we have a 100% engagement goal, which is designed to expand opportunities for all of our engineering students on integrating all of their experiences into a hands-on endpoint. So these are connected through something called one engagement activity, and typically that would be professional development, but some students choose something else, and one engagement competency, such as creativity and innovation. Ultimately, our goal would be to drive something like this into our gen ed programs. That might take 10 years, given the challenges with moving that sort of thing forward. But we have so much demand on the student side that we're building it into our engineering degree, all of our engineering degrees. We do design thinking challenges, which is a process that starts with empathetic, human-centered thinking. So the starting point is, what do people need? And then drives through critical research and analysis, observation, innovation, experimentation, visualizing your ideas. There's a lot of programs in the private sector that have names like sprints and things that have a set approach. We try and build actually our design thinking and the challenges associated with that around what our students are ready for and what they're able to do. So it might be different for freshmen than it is for seniors. But the idea is to train them to design thinking. I'm a zealot for design thinking. I am a trained engineer, but I use it every day in everything that I do. We design new organizational units within the university by having design charrettes first and asking what are the functions that we need to deliver, what does the organization need to do, and then are we constructed to do that or not. It's proven to be enormously useful. And then the fast track programs are something you're going to start to see in higher ed more and more. And this is a place where the private sector and even economic development organizations can really play a role. Because instead of transforming entire curriculum is not set in stone, but it's hard to transform all of a student's curriculum career. But with micro credentials, with certificate programs, with stacked certificate programs, our students are also really, really hungry for that. So just some examples of what we do. These are short-term, 4-week-long trainings. Students can link into them sometimes remotely in things like B2B sales or iOS app development or digital marketing. So we piloted a lot of this in the Eller Business School, but this is really moving outside of the business students. You might see students taking micro-credential in B2B sales in the College of Science or in School of Behavioral and Social Sciences. We really see the hunger for the certificates growing much more rapidly than we're able to actually deliver the certificate programs. So the important thing from my perspective for all of you is what certificates and what micro-credentials are meaningful for our students. We don't want them to think, I'm going to make it up because I think this is actually useful in a lot of job settings, but that getting a micro-credential in game design is because you think games are cool, is actually useful in the job market. So it's really important to help us with that. So now we're going to do. Our engineering dean has been at the university about as long as I have. I think what you're starting to see in engineering, at least, is a real changing of the guard, where the average age of our deans is going down, and this is broadly across the U.S. and certainly in public education. And the reason is twofold. One is being a dean in a large engineering school is hard. It's balancing an enormous number of factors in a very rapidly changing environment. And the other is that it takes a lot of energy to meet the energy of our incoming students. We have more and more students who are asking to become students in engineering who come to the university without all the qualifications. And we normally would not have accepted them, and now this is broad, this is the US. We're now going, how do we work with all these students to make sure that they exit after 4 or 5 years with fully educated, with all of the degree characteristics that we would have looked back 20 years and said we're going to. And we are actually, it turns out, technology is amazing. Education technology is amazing. The ability to bring students up to speed in mathematics alone through online means is transformational now. And I've spent a lot of my time really looking at how that works and how those endpoints were designed and how we know those students are actually learning what they're supposed to learn as they're moving through an engineering curriculum. So we talked about the engineering design program and the student design center. I'm going to give you an update on that. That's an actual, one of my messages when I talk to people about workforce as it comes out of higher ed is that the infrastructure that we have with which to train students is as important as the curriculum. It makes the difference between whether they're workforce ready or not. And that's always a balance for us. Finish up here because I think you'll see this with most U.S. universities, but we have the following major goals in engineering, and our engineering programs are almost all viewed through the lens of Are they multidisciplinary in the sense of are they providing our students opportunities to get access to our faculty in other units of the university, whether it's social sciences, whether it's science, whether it's the humanities. We have a massive digital humanities program at the University of Arizona. Most of the faculty in the digital humanities got their doctorates in computer science, but their application space is the humanities. It may be music, it may be the spoken word, it may be the visual word. So doubling undergraduate enrollment in engineering, that you're going to see that very commonly because it turns out that just the underpinning of data alone in almost every job going forward mandates that students in engineering focus more and more on data, and we deliver more and more of them. Increasing our research faculty, this is not because it brings in more federal research dollars. It is because our students are demanding research experience, and what research is these days is more and more translational, meaning that's a term that comes from medical research. And in medical research, it's going from the lab bench to the clinician as quickly as possible. In the big world of research, it's how quickly and how robustly do we go from basic research to a translational endpoint, meaning it's used, it's in production somewhere, it's applied in a national defense mission, it's in the field one way or another. And we really do, as a set of universities, are really working hard on how to both measure and control the speed with which we develop translational endpoints, and that is what our students, I think the most important thing is that's really what they want to pay, that's where they want to be, and I'll talk about facilities in a second. So what do our future students look like? This is a pretty ubiquitous slide, but it's really true in the Southwest, where the percentage of our under 18 population that's non-white is going up very rapidly. And these are the students that are absolutely critical for our future. So my institution is one of the 4 universities in the US that is both an R1 institution, meaning we've attained the Carnegie designation of extremely research intensive. We are an AAU university, which means we're a member of the 65-member kind of elite Association of American Universities. And we are a Hispanic serving institution, which means that more than 25% of our students are Hispanic students, and almost all of those students are the first person in their family ever to go to college. So they represent not just who we are in the state, but they really represent the story of how we have, as public institutions, successfully served America, which is we take students whose families have no experience with higher education. That is the sort of the goal of the land-grant universities, and we deliver them into the workforce at a much higher level than they would have been. But this slide shows a sort of a classic demographic shift, which we know you're all aware of. We pay heavy, heavy attention to this. So moving forward, along those lines, we have a large number of programs, and we're not alone, so this really is illustrative in recruiting and retaining the diverse student body that represents the state in which we live, or really is representative of the entire Southwest, the region in which we live. So we have a program called Engineering Access, Greater Equality and Diversity. We always pick the acronym first and then back in what it means. Having spent my life developing cool acronyms, which was officially launched just last year. And the goal is to recruit and retain more students from underserved populations, and we do a lot of work in order to start with middle schools throughout Arizona and work with kids in high school, get them into the program. And then if you're if you're the first person in your family ever to go to college, your ability to reach back to your family and get advice about college is zero. And it has nothing to do with anything except they don't have that lived experience. So we provide that version of lived experience advising, and we do so with advisors to the greatest extent possible who look and feel to those students like they are members of their community. So let me just, I actually am going to go over a couple things here because I think you'll see this, and certainly if you're in a company, you may be asked to participate in programs like this. It's really important. We go all the way back to schools that serve marginalized students, public schools typically. For us, not just in southern Arizona, but throughout the state of Arizona, we do paid undergraduate research opportunities for those students that we've worked with in the public school system who come into our universities, because typically they don't have enough money to do the unpaid research internships that students that come from a higher economic background do. We do first-year support through cohort-based, really significant cohort-based community learning. We do peer learning. We do early career mentors, and that's where a lot of our outreach to our regional companies comes, to find volunteers who are willing to do peer mentoring with these students, particularly your employees who themselves were the first person in their family to go to college. It also establishes, by the way, a really nice link between your company and potential employees. We do research exchanges with HBCUs. The Southeast has a fair number of Hispanic serving institutions, but we are not rich with HBCUs, which largely serve African American communities. So we partner with HBCUs largely in the Southeast and in the East Coast. We do student exchanges, so we'll send our students there and bring their students to our campus. It's one of the ways that we both introduce our students to different parts of the country. Many of our students have never left Arizona. Many have never left Tucson. And the same thing with the students that are coming our way. They've never seen the Southwest, never been in the desert, and probably never been to a research-intensive university like ours. So I'm going to skip this slide. There's a lot of ways that this program improves outcomes. We measure it. We don't develop a program like this unless we can measure that there is a really significant change in the outcomes. Get started awards. So again, I think I'll leave this one for you to look at, but we really, again, pay attention to, it is our job to include all of the students that we can that are at least basically ready in the state of Arizona. And if they don't come as prepared because their school system wasn't as prepared, we work to prepare them and get them ready to go. I'm going to talk a little bit about our faculty, because what you'll find at the University of Arizona, and this is true at any research-intensive, minority-serving institution, is we have phenomenal faculty who do phenomenal research and spend an enormous amount of their time also working directly with undergraduates. They get involved in every one of these programs that I'm telling you about. And the support for those faculty is extensive, but I'm going to tell you it's not extensive enough. Recognizing that it is these people who are the linchpin in our ability to deliver into whatever their future is. Graduated students who are entirely competent is really on the backs of these kinds of faculty. So Vishnu Reddy is, I'm a aerospace engineer. I one time in my life built and launched space assets. That was a long time ago, but I remember those days fondly. But Vishnu still does that, and he's actually a professor in the Lunar and Planetary Sciences Laboratory. He builds telescopes, but he works largely with students undergraduate students in engineering to develop student-led programs that can build space assets. We have a couple of small telescopes that our students have built that are out at the Biosphere 2. They are actually conducting scientific studies as we speak. So Vishnu is really committed to the time it takes to write the grants, to get the money, to fund those students to work with him. Is as much time as it takes to write the grants that bring in the $100 million space situational awareness programs that Vishnu leads. Saikat Guha is a faculty member who was just awarded a very large Quantum Networks Award. One of the first in the US, one of the largest. This is the kind of award from the National Science Foundation that also requires corporate engagement through the life of the program. And he and his team have written into their grant two things that are unusual and were part of the reason they won. One is they're really smart and they know a lot about quantum networks. I will tell you, for you, those of you that don't, happy to have a future discussion about that. But this is an example of technology coming down the track really fast for which there is no established economic leader in the world. And I would very much like for that to be here in the state of Arizona. So these guys wrote into their grant support for undergraduate experiences and support for faculty in the College of Law, the College of Business, and the School of Social Sciences to look at societal impacts of these kinds of technologies before they are developed. So we have developed plans, processes, and analyses about how best to deploy them so they do good and not any of the adverse effects that new technology deployed very quickly can have. Carlotta Chief is a professor of environmental sciences. She's also deeply committed to undergraduate research and support. She has a very large program which she is a member of Native Nations in Arizona. She works with Native Nations in Arizona to develop food, energy, and water insecurity solutions that are translatable to many, many global challenges. And that grant not only engages our own undergraduates, but engages undergraduates from our native colleges here in Arizona. And she spends an inordinate amount of her time with undergraduates. My point is that even if we sent our students to a company not fully fit for the job, somebody along the way has to spend the time to get them ready. And in our case, in higher ed, it is largely our faculty. And they do this because they could probably have a job at a national lab. I worked at a national lab for many, many years. Same quality of science, really amazing researchers. No students, nobody to teach and train, no next generation to bring along. You handpick them from, when you have a job advertisement. Our faculty are really committed to being in the middle, making sure that those students end up someplace. And we are all really aware of how much faster that has to happen, how things are changing. I like to point out, these are all my sort of favorite people, so I get to put them in my slides. Dr. Tanga basically builds small sats, CubeSats, microsats, little satellites, and has a huge number of undergraduates that work with him. It turns out there's some amazing funding mechanisms for getting undergraduates involved in building small satellites these days. The point about that is that every one of those students has had to go through a pretty rigorous program of understanding what a program plan is. How does a project work? What is a project budget like? They have to understand what milestones are. So they graduate and they actually are fairly workforce ready from the perspective of understanding what it means to work on a project team. Erin Radcliffe has just developed this incredible program working with a number of our regional national laboratories to really accelerate the STEM pathways for our students, to make sure more of our undergraduates not only go into STEM, but they stay there, they graduate, and they graduate with a job in a national lab. And then Dr. Gutroff has also really spent a lot of his time and treasure on how to create research opportunities for undergraduates that would never, sort of come to the University of Arizona and they've never thought about research before in their lives. So our goal there, so his group looks at biological systems, biological sensors, custom wearables for the medical industry, things like that. Our goal is to take kids who might have, majored in the social sciences and turn them into STEM majors. Even if they stay in the social sciences, is to really make them data scientists as opposed to anything else. I think I talked about this enough. don't think that's all that relevant. So let's get into what are our challenges. I talked about students' readiness when they get to college. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to tell you that we have challenges in higher ed, public higher ed, that are significant, but they are not as significant as the challenges in our public K-12 system are experiencing. And there's a lot of great subject for discussion. We spend as much time as we can reaching back from the place that we are in higher ed down as far as middle school, really, and actively working with those students. So we run 400 or 500 students a year through a program up at the top of Mount Lemmon that just teaches them how to think about science. We run 400 students a year through a program called KEYS. Those are students from all over the state of Arizona. They're high school students. They come to an in-person summer experience at the University of Arizona where they actually conduct research all summer long. And about 85% of those students go on to higher ed. They go on to STEM degrees in higher ed. So we really work one-on-one. It's incredibly labor-intensive. I have high hopes that as the technology of education, or what I call ed tech, really matures and really begins to understand how you remotely deliver students to certain endpoints, that we'll be able to get our hands around that, because I just don't see, there's not a state in the union that is fixing the K-12 problem very well. And I speak as a graduate of the Lexington, Massachusetts public school system, which at the time was the best in the country. And there is nothing like that now. I sent all 5 of my kids to public schools, and it was a challenging experience as a parent. So the other thing, it's really important, I'm going to sort of go through this pretty quickly, but it is important to understand that once we get these students, we have to spend as much energy retaining them as we did in acquiring them. And we really look at the numbers there. So how many of our Latinx students are getting through their first year into their second year, how many are graduating, how many entered in a STEM field and are graduating in a STEM field, etc. You would be, I mean, it's very, these are not our customers, these are our products. And we spend a lot of time and our energy looking at the data and trying to understand it. It would be really interesting for somebody to do a National Academy scale study of how corporate America looks at the data associated with their employees and their productivity, and we look at the data associated with our students and their ability to graduate and ask the question, are they well correlated systems? And if not, should they be better correlated? All right, I'm going to talk about infrastructure for a little bit. I skipped over this program that I adore called ASEMS, which is the Arizona Science, Engineering, and Math Scholars Program. Every year they get another $1 million or $2 million from foundations around the country because they're doing such a good job of creating the underpinnings for allowing students to come in, enter the STEM programs, and leave incredibly well prepared, who didn't come in all that well prepared. So let's talk about our infrastructure a little bit, because at my university, and you'll see this again, we aren't alone, but we're creating an entirely new student success district. Any U of A grads here? So Bear Down Gym is not Bear, I mean, it's still Bear Down Gym, but it looks completely, it is a completely modern, so we took the gym that was built in 1923, I think, still big, beautiful red building, stripped it and put a very modern student engagement and career development program. So this isn't a bunch of little cubicles where students go sit and talk to an advisor. This is actually literally thought through from the perspective of how do you move through this building, out of this building through the different portals, and then into the other components of the Student Success District, so which include a totally transformed engineering library, that include a totally transformed first floor of our main library, which now has very sophisticated, if I say so myself, makerspace, really, really sophisticated and large as a component of what the library offers. So the students have this experience in the Student Success District, which drives them to the places where they need to go, and is also not boring. It's not any kind of a shaming experience. It's one where we expect to see most of our students there almost on a daily basis. The Applied Research Building, these are two bond-funded buildings coming out of the ground, and one that's not here, there's a third one, and that's a third-party finance building. The message there is that universities are having to become extremely sophisticated and diversified in how we look at how our infrastructure gets designed and built and funded, or funded and then designed and built. So in this case, we have an Applied Research Building, which is a three-story building. Not going to tell people where it's located. It doesn't really matter, but it is contiguous with our engineering campus and our health sciences campus. It will largely have engineering, material science, and manufacturing laboratories, as well as space laboratories. So we'll have a small sat production capacity. We'll be managing stratospheric balloon programs, so we'll have an actual space operations center in it. And it's designed to hold large-scale research programs while at the same time providing student capacity to participate in those programs. This is not a teaching and learning building. It is an applied research building. It has corporate partners for every program that is going into it, not one sole corporate partner. But it's been a vision for the university for a while, and it was approved a couple years ago, and it's actually coming out of the ground as we speak. It's pretty exciting. The other is the Grand Challenges building, approved at the same time. Slightly different concept, except it is also a research building into which we have built the capacity to give more of our undergraduates access to the research, but not as a teaching and learning classroom, not where you go listen to a professor talk about stuff. It's actually where you participate in these programs. This building is really meant to take advantage of the rapid changes that are happening in the field of optics, and we have one of the most prominent colleges of optics in the US. We also have two new engineering design projects that are going in there, and it looks like we had a to-be developed sixth floor, which will now be bioinformatics and data and statistics programs associated with medical information. So that is a true multidisciplinary building. It has true capacity to be reconfigured on a regular basis. It has capacity to engage undergraduates at scale in the work. And it was purpose designed for that. The other building I'll tell you about, and each one of these was torture to get developed and funded at this time in the country, really, for higher ed. So great kudos to the legislature of the state of Arizona, which has really, really gone a long distance to helping us get the bond funding approval for these buildings. The Student Design Center is another one of these. The universities that have them have glorious engineering schools, because this is what we need to deliver. We need to deliver students who have state-of-the-art design capability, as well as they can then take their designs and build them. So this building will leverage proximity to both the Applied Research Building, which I just told you about, as well as all of the teaching and learning centers that the College of Engineering already has, and provide design, makerspace, building space, collaborative space, and a student advising center. So it's really the future of engineering education. It will be totally multidisciplinary. It doesn't belong to any one engineering discipline or another. So we will have bioengineers in there, as well as mechanical engineers, as well as industrial engineers. It's going to be a cool building. So I think I've actually addressed most of this, except I want to say something about the fourth industrial revolution. You probably all have heard some definition of it. I'm going to give you the lens from higher ed. It is the core of our strategic plan, and I would argue the words may not be used, but most universities it is. It's that the pace of change of certain underlying technologies is driving the way the entire world works. And those are fourth industrial revolution technologies like robotics, autonomy, anything associated with data, networking, cybersecurity, all of the capabilities that are inherently engineered one way or another. And we are really focused on how is all of that going to affect everything else that we do, from the education technologies that form the basis of how we deliver our pedagogy, which we just got like accelerated by orders of magnitude through the pandemic, to what our schools of agriculture and schools of mining are going to be delivering in the future. So I think for those of you that don't know, we actually have a very large agricultural engineering unit. It is in our College of Agriculture, not our College of Engineering, because it needed to be there. We're really seeing our engineering students in mining become really students of autonomy and data management more than anything else. So we are, that happens to be driven by the fact that our students need that in order to get into the workplace when they graduate. The new software, I've got a couple more slides and then I think I'll entertain questions. One of the things we do when we create a new degree program is survey the industry. We don't build a new program that doesn't have the capacity to deliver our students into jobs. So it really isn't about what seems interesting to our students. It is what gives them the capability to get a job when they're done. So software engineering was sort of front and center for the engineering college. We've got to do this. It's the biggest job growth area in the US. It is a truly multidisciplinary curriculum. We believe to the extent that we can give our students as much of a multidisciplinary curriculum as possible, they will be better lifelong learners, meaning they're going to be successful in getting a job when they graduate, but they'll be even more successful when they have to learn something new, which inevitably they will in 5 years, learn a whole new thing. They will be much better able to pick that up and move on with it. So this is a degree program offered on our main campus, but it's also offered through Arizona Online, which is our US-based online campus, and at our Yuma campus, which is where, I'm sure, well, maybe all of you don't know, but that is the agricultural center of the state of Arizona and the lettuce capital of the US. So this is very thoughtfully designed to be able to be delivered in multi-modes, to be delivered to students who want it online only because of the type of program that it is, to be delivered uniquely to our students who are doing it in person, to give them the kind of experiential learning opportunities that the online students frankly won't probably get. And as an example of how we are building new programs based on industry needs. I'm going to talk about the Forge for a minute because this is one of my programs and it's brand new at the university. Forge stands for Finding Opportunities and Resources for Growing Entrepreneurship. This is also something you'll see at universities, public universities. Their job is to build entrepreneurial mindset, largely in our students, but if our faculty want it, they can have it too, and our local communities. So we really are trying to be a core node in our innovation ecosystem here in Tucson, meaning we are driving not just students to become workers in our startups or our companies, but we are actually trying to drive the entire ecosystem to be moving a little faster, thinking a little differently, attracting capital from other places, and really creating a startup launch system that works. So the Student Venture Pathways is a program that is offered in the fall. It's problem-based challenges. Students come, solve a challenge. They come up with solutions. They typically are working with a bunch of mentors. A lot of the mentors in Tucson, this is a retirement destination, but an incredible number of our retirees are either former military or former tech company. And we have incredible volunteers to work with students in this pathway. Then in the following semester, we offer them, if they want it, Venturing 101, which is a mini course based on Lean Canvas. They can get a certificate from that. These are the kids that might want to go on from what they learned in Student Venture Pathways Part 1 and create their own intellectual property. For those that you don't know, in a university system, if you work for us, your intellectual property belongs to us, and we work out ways to license it to you if you want to start a company and things like that. But if you are a student, your intellectual property belongs to you unless you have been paid by the university as a worker. And we encourage our students to create intellectual property, and we help them, support them in what does it take to do that. The Summer Advanced Entrepreneur Program is a 7-week program for early stage startups. So think about just really early stage startups that runs them through the whole knowledge and experience of customer discovery, business modeling. They have very advanced mentors who are used to working with startup companies. And every piece of this, the picture there actually is our first separate building for the Forge, which is in downtown Tucson. It gives us access to the community and the community access to us. But it also gives our students a sense of, if they go there, it's like going to a startup. Startup Tucson, and I'll talk about them in a sec, basically our startup enhancement company unit here in Tucson is co-located with the Forge there. But the Forge also has little subunits all over our main campus. It has a location in engineering, it has one in health sciences, we're building one in the humanities. So these are places where students can go and get all this content there, and we don't turn faculty down, even though we tell them it's not all about you, it's about what our students get. And then we have this partnership with Startup Tucson, who I talked about, is co-located with the Forge downtown. Basically, this is very targeted. It's a program that comprises introductory content on computer science principles, programming, local career services. This is not just for college students. This is for any student in the region that's interested in this. It's tuition free. They don't have to have programming experience. It basically utilizes a curriculum from Harvard that focuses on problem solving, but with the fairly narrow lens of computer science. The idea is to remove barriers from anyone that is thinking this might be interesting, but I can't do it. And to really deliver them, deliver them at the end point to where they could either get a very basic programming job, or they can absolutely start down the path of majoring in that, either starting at our community colleges, which have pathways towards us for 4-year. It really prepares them for the next stage of becoming a technologist. And I feel very much that when we talk about entrepreneurial mindset, this is the kind of future we're talking about. It's creating networked opportunities for people that didn't exist before, and that where we look through the lens of what do we know, what do we learn, how do we operate at the University of Arizona, and try and deliver that out into our community. Again, why do we do that? It is good. It's doing good for our community, but it's also because that is how you become a larger node in an innovation ecosystem. If we aren't creating innovators everywhere, not just amongst our students and our faculty, we're not doing the job that a university like ours, that is a major player in a community like ours, is supposed to do. So I will end there, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have them.
Betsy, just a quick clarification. In the capstone experience, you said the intellectual property belongs to the company.
If the capstone, typically capstones are paid for by a company.
Well, hypothetically, if one of your students invented, let's say, a biochemical semiconductor that uses DNA instead of circuits for Intel.
And they did it in a capstone process, they would have signed a piece of paper that said they...
So the university and the student would not share in the patent, and there would be no royalties for a $1 trillion growth sector.
So you're asking a question to which there is no single answer. Each company has a different deal in order to do a capstone, and the students participate if they want to, and they sign, and the faculty who want to. So if a company says, we're going to give you, I don't know, $100,000 to do this capstone, it's really cool, we're going to give everybody drones, we're going to teach them all this stuff, but any intellectual property that comes out of this belongs solely to us, and we agreed as an institution, then anybody participating would also have to agree.
The undergraduates.
All of them, anybody participating. So that is a form of, so maybe it's a nuance to, if a student is paid by the university to do something, then the intellectual property, they have the same rights and responsibilities as any employee does. In the context of a capstone is a slight nuance on that, but those constraints apply.
Well, we're approaching our time limit here. I want to thank you for it.
I have a question I'm going to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm a big fan of U of A, so, you know, with the market the way it is in the security information and defense, a few years ago, and if you're not prepared to discuss this, that's fine.
I might be, though.
A few years ago, U of A announced an initiative, a defense and security initiative with U of A, and I was just wondering if you could address that.
Sure. So I sit on the board of that entity. It's a 501c3. I've also created several. I come from the classified world. And this is a prime example for U.S. universities. You'll see this a lot. It's actually real. You'll see it a lot, not just in the defense space, but in any area where there is a different kind of interface that's needed. So as a public university, actually any university in the U.S., we have obligations to be free and open. We treat all of our employees and our students the same. If the material under discussion, in this case, it might be classified. In some cases, it's business sensitive. In some cases, it's subject to international agreements. Wishes to be treated differently, then it makes sense to create what I call a boundary organization. Still affiliated with the university, but not solely a state agent. So that entity is now called the University of Arizona Applied Research Corporation, or the UARC. We just built actually a separate space for them in our third-party finance building in the Bridges here. And so this is a classic sort of third-party deal where we own the land, we lease it to a company that develops it for us, and we are now leasing space in the buildings that are being developed in this research park. It's our second sizable research park.
And this where defense industries could actually lease that square footage.
And there is square footage in there that is for lease, yes. And so there's many space constraints with something like that. You know, it's interesting in that same, so we have considerations about the kinds of companies and the kinds of employees that can go in that just on that floor of that building. But then my tech transfer arm will be there. One of our incubators will be there. I'll have an office there just to go. But so we're moving a lot of what I call our innovation components of the enterprise into that building and into that space. But another example of working, this is really working with a company. We're also building a purpose-built building there, a pretty inexpensive building, but it will have a faculty program which is funded partly by the federal government and partly by a couple of companies, where the constraints are not in terms of things like classified, but it's very business sensitive work, and that didn't have a good protectable home on the campus because we're pretty space constrained, so we're building a building very specifically for that purpose.
So you didn't go to a SCIF level type square footage?
We do have SCIF level square footage in several locations.
That's good.
I would also point to the University of Arizona, and many of your universities and places you come from has a campus next to our largest military base, which is actually Fort Huachuca, which is a U.S. Army Center of Excellence for Intelligence. And that campus serves as a significant research partner with that base for reasons which I think have everything to do with not only providing that base with the workforce they need, but with really providing a little bit more, and in some cases a lot more, innovation associated with challenges that the military is experiencing, that it doesn't have the innovative culture with which to work. And in this case, they really work a lot on cybersecurity challenges. So that's a going concern. And I sit on their board, and we have a lot of interesting future there. Other questions? Otherwise, I think you have and it's always happy hour in Arizona. Happy hour.
Well, Betsy, I have to say that your statistic that 90% of your graduates graduate with a job As somebody who's still waiting for Rutgers University to tell me which job they were preparing me for. That
And
is
here you
an
are.
incredible stat, but thank you for a very informative presentation on one of the nation's leading tech talent pipelines, preparing students for the jobs of the future. So thank you, and we'll see everybody at dinner at the Country Club.